True transfer of legacy in the ecclesia refers to the process by which leadership and spiritual authority are passed down or transferred from one generation to the next within the context of a Christian community. It emphasizes the passing on of core values, beliefs, and practices, ensuring continuity and growth in the spiritual life of the community. This transfer typically involves mentorship, discipleship, and intentional training, as well as recognizing and affirming the gifts and callings of emerging leaders. The goal is to ensure that the foundational principles of the faith are preserved and that the community continues to thrive and fulfill its mission. I'm Dr. Ray, and welcome to this week's Hosea International Speaks. True legacy transfer, as mentioned last week, we said that the true legacy transfer is more than the transfer of responsibility and duties of the senior leader. We also said it was not just taking the place of the senior leader's play or position, but that it involves a power dynamics of the life of the Spirit and the Word that operates in him. And we left off with the reading of Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verses 18 through 17 and verse 21. If you wish, you can go ahead and stop it here and go ahead and read those scriptures. So what is true legacy transfer? Number one, true legacy transfer involves the dimension of the Spirit. Deuteronomy 34:9 says, "Now Joshua, the son of Nun, was filled with the spirit of wisdom, for Moses had laid his hands on him, and the sons of Israel listened to him," that is Joshua, "and did as the Lord had commanded Moses." Numbers 27:18 says, "So the Lord said to Moses, take Joshua, the son of Nun, a man in whom is the Spirit, and lay your hands on him." Under the direction of Yahweh, Moses was to lay his hands on the next successor. If this is how Yahweh directed Moses, then he would surely direct us today in the same way. Paul also laid his hands on Timothy when Timothy was given the leadership of the church at Ephesus. For Paul told him to stir up the gift that was in him by the laying on of the hands, 2 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 6. And he says this, "For this reason, I remind you to kindle afresh the gift of Elohim, which is in you through the laying on of my hands." When it came to transferring all on the 7 elders in the desert, the spirit that was upon Moses was placed on the 70, which we read in Numbers 11:25. Then the Lord came down in the cloud and spoke to him, that is to Moses, and he took of the spirit who was upon him and placed him upon the 70 elders. And when the Spirit rested upon them, they prophesied, but they did not do it again. So even if it's just for one time, the Lord will have you lay hands on men and women. When Moses laid his hands on Joshua, the spirit of wisdom filled him. This was another measure of the Spirit that came upon him at the laying on of hands and the commissioning of Moses. He already had the Spirit on him. Yahweh's sovereignty takes on the dimension of a man's spirit and places it upon the next generation, which is what we saw here when the team of the 70 prophesied with the spirit of prophecy that flowed from Moses. This dimension also was pronounced when Saul came to look for David at Ramah, and he started to prophesy when he came within the vicinity, notice, and the spiritual territory of Samuel's governing anointing. That can be seen in 1 Samuel chapter 19, verses 20 and 21 and verses 23 to 24. Then Saul sent messengers, listen to this, to take David, but when they saw the company of the prophets prophesying with Samuel standing and presiding over them, the Spirit of Yahweh came upon the messengers of Saul, and they also prophesied. When it was told to Saul, he sent out other messengers, and they also prophesied. So Saul sent messengers again the third time, and they also prophesied. Then he proceeded there to Naoth in Ramah, and the Spirit of Yahweh came upon him also, so that he went along prophesying continually until he came to Naboth in Ramah. He also stripped off his clothes, and he too prophesied before Samuel and laid naked all that day and all that night. Therefore, they say, is Saul also among the prophets. In true succession, the spirit dimensions imparted into the next generation will produce the zeal to obey the same proceeding word and keep the same assignment of the founding fathers. That can be seen in 2 Kings chapter 9, verses 1 and 2, and also chapter 9:20 and verses 36 and 37. You can see all of that if you go down and read it. The second transfer is the true transfer of legacy involves the dimensions of the proceeding word. Joshua 1:7-8 tells us, only be strong and very courageous. Be careful to do according to all the law which Moses, my servant, commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, so that you may have success wherever you go. Notice that, success wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have success. Joshua knew that the proceeding word given to him was a connection and expansion of what was already spoken to Moses. Yahweh was impressing upon the heart and the mind of Joshua that he cannot Moses successful until he knew what was already told by him of way of divine instruction and commandment. Joshua's ministry was a continuation of Moses's only because he was to continue on Moses's mission and started where Moses had left off. In the case of Abraham, the next generation must walk in the way of righteousness like him, so that they have the finishing power of faith to inherit what Yahweh had spoken to him. Note Genesis chapter 18, 17 through 19. And the Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? Since Abraham will surely become a great and mighty nation, and in him all the nations of the earth will be blessed. For I have chosen him so that he may command his children, those who would follow him, and his household after him, to keep the way of Yahweh by doing righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring upon Abraham what he had spoken about him. Abraham believed Yahweh, and it was reckoned to him as righteousness, as we can see in Romans chapter 4, verses 3, 6, and 9. He was to command his children and his descendants after him to keep this way of righteousness by doing righteousness and justice. This would ensure that all that Yahweh had spoken to Abraham would come into reality. The next generation, notice, cannot succeed without obedience to what had already been spoken and written to the forefathers. This becomes bylaws and the constitution of future generations. Number 3, true legacy transfer involves power dimensions. Moses not only placed some of his honor and some of his spirit, but also some of his authority on Joshua. We read this in Numbers 27 and 20, which says, he shall put some of your authority, you shall put some of your authority on him, talking about Joshua, in order that all the congregation of the sons of Israel may obey him. The sons of Israel listened to Joshua and obeyed him like they obeyed Moses. Deuteronomy 34:9 says, now Joshua, the son of Nun, was filled with the spirit of wisdom, for Moses had laid his hands on him, and the sons of Israel listened to him and did as the Lord had commanded Moses. This commissioning placed upon Joshua as Yahweh's delegated authority and brought his government over the nation. Now, there are higher dimensions of power that deals with authority and power that speaks to the nation. These verses prophetically are declared to the nations. You can see this in Jeremiah chapter 1, verses 5 and 10. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I consecrated you. I have appointed you a prophet to the nations. Verse 10. See, I have appointed you this day over the nations and over the kingdoms to pluck up, to break down, to destroy, to overthrow, to build, and to plant. This dimension is to provide governing grace so that we can bring the nation back to the obedience of faith, even in this land, this America, or this Australia, or this Indonesia, or this European country, whatever it may be. Number 4, true legacy transfer involves an indestructible life. The senior leader must impart his life and lifestyle's core values into the succeeding generation. It would be easier to appoint and position someone into leadership to carry out some of the responsibilities, but what is needed is more than just accurate management principles in order to succeed. Moses' father-in-law Jethro introduced some principles to Moses when he saw Moses becoming weary because of the task of shepherding nearly 3 million people. Yahweh wound up reorganizing Moses' structure and had appointing leaders who would carry his spirit dimensions and not just his responsibility. Yahweh took some of his spirit and placed it upon the 70 leaders. Paul had to transfer his life dimensions into Timothy so that Timothy could represent him accurately. You can see that in Acts chapter 16, verses 1 through 4. And there are other scriptures with which to compare that will help you in this area of transferring the indestructible life that you might want to investigate. Philippians chapter 2, verses 20 through 22, chapter 3, 16 through 17. Also 1 Corinthians chapter 4, 15 through 17, and 2 Timothy 1, 5 through 7. Fifth, true legacy transfer involves the kingdom dimension. Moses knew Yahweh face to face and had a stature before him. He found the favor of Yahweh's presence continually in his life. This distinctive factor caused all his enemies and competitors to bow. You can read that in chapter 34 of Deuteronomy and 10. Moses had stature in the spirit realm, and the powers of darkness were continually destroyed through what he carried. You can see that when he came against the magicians of Egypt. And this also can be seen in Exodus chapter 7, 10 through 12, and Deuteronomy chapter 34, 11. Paul carried this same anointing, which you can read about in Acts chapter 9, 19, 6, 11, and through 12, and also verses 18 through 20. The sixth area, true legacy transfer involves breakthrough mentality and culture. The forefathers often operate on breakthrough thinking mentalities. They have the grace to pioneer and open up these rugged terrains to make them livable and habitable. What was impossible before will become possible and doable today. The speed of these developments could be phenomenal as breakthroughs are seen each week and the progress becomes evident every day. Our seventh area, final area of this is, I know I went a little long today. True legacy transfer involves the continuation. This is probably the most important, the continuation of the assignment. Successors who take over an ecclesia often take what others have done and make it better. They modernize what was accomplished so far. They are administratively, most of the time, stronger than the previous generation. They're locked into current technology and a lot faster in probably getting the job done. In short, we cannot complain about these results. However, legacy transfer includes the continuation of the assignment. For example, when a relay team is running a 4x400 meter race, all the runners are running the same race. Each runs 400 meters, no shortcuts. Why? Because disqualifies the whole team. The performance fails if any one of them quits the race or underperforms. We continue to run the same race when we receive the same baton. A prime example is the baton that was passed from Elijah to Elisha. But when the time came to pass the baton to Gehazi, it failed to pass into good hands. Well, if you enjoyed this week, go ahead and hit the like button. I know I ran a little over today. And if you haven't yet subscribed, now is a good time to do it. And you can give through two outlets, Venmo and Cash App. If you wish to contact me at Hosea International at yahoo.com or HoseaINTspeaks@gmail.com. I'm Dr. Ray, and I'll see you next week on Hosea International Speaks.